Disclaimer: this story is a work of emotional storytelling inspired by real-life experiences. While it reflects themes of love, betrayal, and healing, names and certain events may be fictionalized for narrative purposes and privacy. Reader discretion is advised due to emotionally intense content related to infidelity and heartbreak. Everything felt perfect, almost too perfect. I used to believe that love, when it's real, doesn't need constant proving. And for the longest time, he made me feel like I was the center of his world. His name was Aiden, and to me, he wasn't just a boyfriend, he was my best friend, my safe space, my forever plan. We met through a mutual friend 3 years ago, and it was effortless from the start. Our conversations flowed like we'd known each other in another lifetime. He was charming in a quiet, respectful way, and he had this way of listening that made me feel heard even in my silences. He'd remember little things, like how I liked my coffee or what song calmed me down on rough days. He would drive across the city just to spend an hour with me after my night shifts. Those moments made me believe in forever. People around us often called us the perfect couple. We had inside jokes, weekend getaways, and shared playlists. We even started talking about moving in together. My friends adored him, my parents trusted him, and in all honesty, I did too. With Aiden, I never felt the need to snoop, question, or second guess. We had what I thought was unshakable trust. There were nights we would lie under the stars, talking about our dreams, his job as a software engineer, my plans to start a small business, our imagined future kids, and the little house with a yellow door we both liked on that quiet street near the park. We even joked about what our dog would be named. It was all so vivid, so easy to believe. Looking back now, I realize I was living in a bubble of love, unaware of what was slowly growing beneath the surface. But at the time, I felt safe. I felt chosen. I felt loved. There were no signs, at least none that I could recognize. He was affectionate, attentive, and rarely gave me reasons to doubt him. We had disagreements, sure, but they were always resolved with mutual respect. No screaming matches, no silent treatments, just calm, mature communication. Or so I thought. It's strange, isn't it? How life sometimes gives you peace right before it flips your world upside down. Like the silence before a violent storm, or the calm of the ocean before it swallows a ship whole. And as I write this now, I still wonder, was he always like that? Was he pretending the whole time? Or did something change along the way that I just didn't see? Maybe I'll never know. But what I do know is that the moment I walked into his apartment that day, everything I believed about love and loyalty shattered. And nothing would ever be the same again. It didn't happen overnight. That's what made it harder to notice, how everything started to shift so slowly, so subtly. If you had asked me 6 months before everything fell apart whether I trusted Aiden, I would have said yes without hesitation. But something began to change. I just couldn't put my finger on it. It started with his phone. He used to leave it lying around, never caring if I saw a message or picked it up to check the time. But now, it was always face down. Notifications stopped popping up on the lock screen. He even changed his passcode one day without telling me. I remember asking, half jokingly, "Upgrading your security?" He just laughed it off, saying it was for work. Then came the late nights. He started staying at the office more, deadlines, he said. Team projects. I tried to be supportive. I mean, he had always been career-driven, and I admired that about him. But something about the way he distanced himself began to feel off. He was physically present, yes, but emotionally? It felt like he was somewhere else entirely. We used to talk every night before bed, about our day, random thoughts, silly memes we saw. But suddenly, conversations became shorter. Sometimes, we wouldn't even talk unless I initiated it. His responses were delayed, sometimes distracted, like his mind was elsewhere. Like someone else had his attention. I brushed it off, again and again. When I told my best friend Maya about it, she gave me a long look and said, "You sure everything's okay? You don't think he's seeing someone else?" I remember snapping, "Of course not. Aiden wouldn't do that. Looking back, I wish I had listened. Or at least paid attention to how defensive I got. It wasn't just about trusting him, it was also about not wanting to believe that the person I loved could hurt me that way. There were other signs, too. He stopped posting pictures with me on social media. He missed my cousin's engagement party even though he promised to come. When I got sick with the flu, he didn't visit, he just sent a text saying he was swamped with work. It didn't feel like him. The Aiden I knew would have shown up with soup and stayed by my side until I fell asleep. I remember sitting on my couch one evening, staring at the door, half expecting him to walk in and prove me wrong. But he didn't. And with every passing day, my gut twisted tighter. Still, I didn't confront him. Maybe it was fear. Maybe denial. Or maybe deep down, I was waiting for something undeniable, something that would leave no room for excuses or explanations. And I got it. It was a quiet Sunday when everything came crashing down. I remember the day so clearly. It's the kind of memory that tattoos itself into your mind with painful precision. He told me he was home, sick, and needed to rest. I told him I'd stay away to let him recover. But something about the way he ended the call, it didn't sit right with me. So, I decided to surprise him. If only I had known what I was about to walk into. It was one of those unusually quiet Sunday mornings. The sky outside was overcast, the kind of gray that made everything feel still. I was home alone, sipping tea and watching reruns of a show we used to enjoy together. But I wasn't really watching. My mind was with Aiden. He'd told me the night before that he wasn't feeling well, headache, fever, body aches. Probably just a cold, he said. I offered to come over and take care of him, but he insisted he needed to rest and didn't want to get me sick. He sounded tired. Distant, even. I didn't argue. I told him I loved him and hoped he'd feel better soon. But something kept gnawing at me. A gut feeling I couldn't shake off. Maybe it was the way he rushed off the phone. Or how, lately, there had always been an excuse. Excuses for not seeing me. Excuses for not calling. Excuses for just not being the same. I sat on my couch, holding my phone, my thumb hovering over his contact. I wanted to call again, just to hear his voice. But instead, I stared at the half-finished bowl of soup I'd made, his favorite, the one he always craved when he was sick, and I made a decision. I would go see him. Not to catch him in anything, not to accuse him, but just to be there. To care for him the way he used to care for me. If he was truly sick, he'd be touched that I came. And if he wasn't, well, maybe my instincts weren't wrong after all. I packed the soup, some medicine, and a little note that read, "Thought you could use a bit of love today." I remember writing it with shaky hands, not fully sure why I felt so nervous. It should have been a sweet gesture. That's what love does, right? Shows up, even when uninvited. The drive to his apartment felt longer than usual. My chest tightened with every passing mile. I kept telling myself I was overthinking, that he'd smile when he saw me. Maybe even apologize for being so distant lately. I parked in front of his building, took a deep breath, and walked up to his floor. His apartment was quiet. Too quiet. I stood outside his door for a second, listening. No TV. No music. Just silence. I knocked gently. No answer. I tried again, louder this time. Still nothing. A sinking feeling grew in my stomach as I reached into my bag for the spare key he'd given me months ago. I remember how proud he was when he gave it to me. "This means you're home now," he had said. I turned the key and slowly opened the door. His living room was dim, the curtains drawn. Shoes were on the floor by the couch. A woman's shoes. My heartbeat started pounding in my ears. Carefully, I walked down the hallway toward the bedroom. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open, praying I was wrong. And then, I saw him. Lying in bed. Sleeping. And he wasn't alone. The world stopped. For a full 5 seconds, maybe longer, I couldn't breathe. I stood frozen in the doorway, the plastic bag with the soup and medicine slipping from my hand and hitting the floor with a dull thud. But neither of them moved. Not him. Not her. There they were, Aiden and a woman I had never seen before, curled up under the same blanket, completely unaware that their secret had just been uncovered. I stared in disbelief. My mind scrambled to make sense of what I was seeing. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. Maybe she was a friend. Maybe she was just sleeping there by mistake. Maybe nothing happened. Maybe I was the crazy one for jumping to conclusions. I wanted so badly to find a way to make it innocent. But then he shifted in his sleep and pulled her closer. That broke me. I don't remember walking, but somehow I was standing at the foot of the bed, staring at the man I thought I knew, the man who had told me just last night that he was too sick to see me. My hands were shaking. My mouth opened to speak, but no sound came out. All I could feel was the dull roar of betrayal crashing over me like a wave. Then, his eyes opened. For a second, he looked confused, like he couldn't understand what was happening. Then panic set in. He sat up quickly, pulling the blanket up to cover himself and glancing at the girl beside him who was now beginning to stir. Wait, what are you doing here? He said, his voice hoarse and low, like he was still waking up from a dream. A dream I had just shattered. I looked at him, really looked, and saw everything I'd missed. The lies. The distance. The late nights. It all made sense now. You said you were sick, I whispered. My voice came out like a stranger's. So I brought you soup. I wanted to take care of you. The girl beside him sat up, clearly just realizing what was going on. She looked at me, then at Aiden, and then back at me with wide, horrified eyes. Who is she? She asked. I turned to her slowly. I'm his girlfriend, I said flatly. Who are you? The silence that followed was unbearable. Aiden scrambled out of bed, stammering. Listen, it's not what it looks like, okay? Just let me explain. No, I cut him off. Don't you dare insult my intelligence. Tears filled my eyes, but I refused to let them fall in front of him. I gave you everything, Aiden. My love, my time, my trust. And you threw it away. For this? The girl looked like she wanted to disappear. I almost felt sorry for her, almost. She had been lied to too. I could see it in her face. She hadn't known about me. She was a victim of his deception, just like I was. I backed away from the room, from the stench of betrayal that clung to the air like smoke. My hands fumbled for the door as Aiden called after me, begging me to stay, to listen. But I didn't. I walked out of that apartment with my heart in pieces, the sound of his voice growing quieter behind me. And just like that, everything changed. I didn't make it far. I had barely stepped outside the apartment building when I heard the door behind me swing open. Aiden's voice called out, desperate, breathless. Wait. Please just talk to me. I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, not because I wanted to, but because my legs suddenly refused to move. He caught up to me, still wearing a shirt he must have thrown on in a hurry. His hair was a mess. His face was pale. But I didn't care. Not anymore. You lied to me, I said coldly, not even looking at him. And you didn't just lie once. You looked me in the eye for weeks, months, and pretended everything was fine. Please, he said, stepping in front of me. It wasn't like that. I didn't mean for this to happen. I was confused, things between us haven't been the same lately. That made my blood boil. So instead of talking to me, you slept with someone else? My voice trembled, not with weakness, but with rage. You told me you loved me, Aiden. You let me plan a future with you. I do love you, he said quickly. I swear I do. It was a mistake. It just happened. I didn't plan for it. That phrase, "it just happened," hit like a slap. As if betrayal were an accident, like spilling coffee. As if she just tripped and fell into his bed. I stared at him in disbelief. "You cheated on me and then lied to my face. Over and over. You made me feel like I was imagining things, like I was crazy." He was crying now. I didn't care. His tears didn't mean anything anymore. They were too late, too convenient. "I was scared," he muttered. "I didn't want to lose you." "You already did." Just then, the other woman appeared at the doorway, her arms crossed over her chest, watching the scene unfold. She looked heartbroken, too. That's when it clicked, she hadn't known about me at all. She had been pulled into the same lie, the same game. The realization hit me hard. He didn't just betray me. He betrayed her, too. She called out, "You told me you were single, Aiden." He turned, clearly torn. "I didn't mean for this to happen like this," she scoffed, shaking her head in disbelief, and went back inside. For a second, I almost felt a sense of twisted camaraderie with her, two women, fooled by the same man. I looked back at Aiden, my voice quieter now, but laced with finality. "You don't get to explain your way out of this. You don't get to lie your way into my life again." He reached for my hand, but I stepped back. "This is over." And with that, I walked away. No more begging. No more stories. No more chances. It wasn't just the end of our relationship, it was the death of the version of him I thought I knew. And while that realization hurt more than anything, it also freed me. The days that followed felt like walking through a fog. I didn't eat much. I didn't talk much. I just moved, woke up, showered, sat in silence, scrolled through my phone without seeing anything. Sleep was the only escape I had, but even then, my dreams were haunted by memories that didn't feel safe anymore. My heart wasn't just broken, it was confused. Because how do you mourn someone who's still alive, still texting, still calling, still trying to explain what can never be justified? Aiden didn't stop reaching out. Every morning, I woke up to long, desperate texts. Sometimes he'd send pictures of us, laughing, kissing, holding hands. He'd say, "Remember this? Don't throw us away." He still didn't get it. I didn't throw us away. He did. My best friend Maya stayed with me most nights. She brought over snacks, movies, face masks, anything to distract me from the dull, throbbing pain in my chest. I'd pretend to be fine, but sometimes, she'd find me staring at the wall, my eyes glassy. "You loved him," she'd whisper, squeezing my hand. "You weren't stupid. You were loyal." And maybe that's what hurt the most. I was loyal. Even when things felt off, I held on tighter. I believed in him. In us. I was ready to build a future with a man who was already burning it down behind my back. A week later, I finally blocked his number. Not out of hate, but out of necessity. I couldn't keep reading his apologies. I couldn't keep reopening wounds that needed to heal. Forgiveness, I knew, would come one day. But not now. Not while the betrayal was still fresh in my bones. I deleted our pictures. Unfollowed him. Threw out the hoodie he left at my place. All the little reminders that used to make me smile now made me sick. I didn't want to remember him smiling at me when I didn't know the truth. But healing is strange. It comes in waves. Some mornings, I felt stronger. I'd wake up and feel a flicker of power in my chest, the kind of power that comes from choosing yourself. Other days, the memories would hit like a punch, and I'd cry in the shower just so no one would hear. I began journaling everything, every emotion, every unanswered question, every ounce of pain. Not because I needed closure from him, but because I needed clarity within me. And slowly, I started reclaiming myself. I went back to yoga. I joined a book club. I spent more time with people who reminded me what real love felt like, safe, steady, respectful. It was messy, yes. Healing always is. But every day that I didn't call him, didn't cry for him, didn't miss him as much, I counted it as a win. Because I wasn't just recovering from heartbreak. I was remembering who I was before I lost myself in someone else's lies. There's something strange about healing. It doesn't come with a finish line or a clear sign that says, "You're okay now." Instead, it creeps in quietly, through small decisions, tiny victories, and moments when you realize you're no longer gasping for air. Rebuilding myself wasn't about getting revenge or proving anything to Aiden. It was about proving something to me, that I could survive this, that I could stand back up after being completely shattered. At first, I had no idea where to begin. I had built so much of my routine, my happiness, my future around Aiden. Without him, I felt directionless, like someone had suddenly erased the second half of my story. But I knew I couldn't stay stuck in that space forever. So I started small. I rearranged my apartment. Moved the couch. Changed the sheets. Took down the framed photos of us and replaced them with art that made me feel something. It sounds trivial, but there's a kind of power in reclaiming your space, making it your own again, free from shadows. I reconnected with old friends. Ones I hadn't seen much during the relationship. They welcomed me back without question. No lectures, no, "I told you so," just open arms. One evening, after dinner, one of them said, "You seem lighter. Like you're coming back to yourself." And I realized she was right. I was. I also started taking better care of myself, not just physically, but emotionally. I set boundaries. I said no when I needed to. I stopped over-explaining my feelings or apologizing for taking up space. I realized how often I'd dimmed myself to avoid conflict with Aiden, how many times I'd swallowed my voice to keep the peace. Not anymore. Therapy helped too. I didn't go because I was broken, I went because I was brave enough to want better. I needed to understand why I ignored the red flags, why I clung to someone who didn't choose me, why I stayed when I felt so unseen. And slowly, through each session, I began to forgive myself, not for trusting him, but for abandoning me. The most important part of rebuilding? Learning to be alone without feeling lonely. There were nights when the silence echoed. When I'd reach for my phone, forgetting for a moment that I had no one to text, "Good night, I love you." But over time, that silence became a kind of comfort. A reminder that I didn't need chaos to feel alive. I didn't need lies disguised as love. I started dating again, not seriously, just casually. More as a way to practice being open without being afraid. I learned to trust my instincts, to speak my truth, to walk away when something didn't feel right. I promised myself I would never settle again. Not for half-truths. Not for conditional love. I was no longer the girl who had walked into that room and found her boyfriend sleeping with another woman. I was someone new. Someone stronger. Someone wiser. And most of all, someone finally choosing herself. If you're reading this and your heart is broken, really broken, I want you to hear this loud and clear: it is not your fault. Being lied to, cheated on, betrayed by someone you loved deeply can make you question everything. You replay moments in your head. You ask yourself what you missed, what you could have done differently, whether you were somehow not enough. But let me tell you what I've learned: being loyal to the wrong person doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. You gave your heart in good faith. You trusted someone who said they'd never hurt you. That's not something to be ashamed of, it's something to be proud of. Because your ability to love deeply, to trust fully, to believe in someone, that's rare. And someday, someone will meet you at that level. But before that happens, you have to meet yourself. You have to give yourself the love you were willing to give them. You have to speak kindly to yourself when the nights get heavy. You have to allow the pain to come, without judgment. Feel it. Let it wash over you. Let it break you open. Because that's where healing starts, at the very place your heart cracked wide open. And when the world tells you to just move on, I want you to know, you don't have to rush. Healing isn't linear. Some days you'll feel strong, other days you'll feel like you're drowning again. That's okay. Keep breathing. Keep going. Forgiveness isn't about saying what they did was okay. It's about freeing yourself from carrying their betrayal forever. You deserve peace. You deserve to stop replaying the moment it all fell apart. You deserve joy, laughter, quiet. And love? Real love? It doesn't cheat. It doesn't lie. It doesn't make you feel small or confused or unwanted. It doesn't disappear when things get hard. When it's right, it will feel like safety, not survival. So if you're walking through heartbreak right now, I want you to remember, you are not broken. You are not unlovable. You are not alone. You're just in a chapter that hurts. But the book isn't over. In fact, the best pages are still unwritten. And maybe, like me, you'll look back someday and thank the person who betrayed you, not because of what they did, but because it forced you to become the strongest version of yourself. Because now I know exactly who I am. And no one can take that from me again. 28.